Good morning, everyone. I am Sam with NATP, and I am here joined again with Tom. Tom is our Director of Tax Content and Government Relations. We are here talking again about the Inflation Reduction Act and kind of the future of the industry, Tom. There's been a little bit of speculation going on about that, some conversations that we wanted to weigh in on. But first, I'm going to back up. Tom, can anyone who wasn't with us last time, can you just introduce yourself quick and give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Well, thanks for joining us today. My name is Tom O'Savin. I am the Director of Tax Content and Government Relations for NATP. Moreover, I've been a practitioner for a long, long time, 30 plus years now. So I experience what you folks experience on a daily basis. And I've been an instructor for NATP and other organizations starting in about 2003. And then again, most recently being invited to join the national office to kind of, is the same name it says, direct our tax content, knowing what I know what you deal with your clients every day. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and Tom, your wealth of knowledge is just I know I say this to everyone, but I really do mean it to you. It's just astounding, and we're really lucky to have you. So it's wonderful to talk with you again today. And so, like I said before, we are talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. And so, Tom, you've looked through this a few times now, probably been analyzing it. There have been some provisions that have been garnering a lot of media attention, specifically having to do with IRS funding. And so the last time we talked, it was just about to be signed. Since then, this has been signed. And one of the components that a lot of people are talking about is a funding for a study about the IRS's free file system. And so, can you tell me a little bit about that, Tom? What is the study? What are we talking about here?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sam. And yes, it is true that the IRS is getting $80 billion over the next 10 years of additional funding besides what they need. Embedded within that, let's call it $8 billion a year over 10 years, is $15 million for them to do a study of the free file system and perhaps a different free file system. Now, let me take a half a step back for you. For those of you who follow the news, you might have heard this past summer that Senator Elizabeth Warren talked about that there should be a mechanism for people to be able to go to the IRS and be given the information that the IRS already has. So think about electronic submissions of things like 1099s and W-2s, 1099-R for pension or IRA distributions. And so this is somewhat addressing Senator Warren's desire for the ability for people to go to a system that doesn't cost anything to file their taxes and first and foremost be able to see the information that the IRS has on file. Now, the mechanics of that sound really simple, but they can be really, really complicated too, because we as practitioners know that not every piece of income and deduction has a commensurate form that's filed with the IRS. It's a starting point, it's helpful, but at the same time, I want to give you kind of the mindset of what I believe the study is supposed to work on. And we don't know how long a study could take. It could take 3 years, it could take 5 years. They have $15 million out of this $80 billion pot to report back to Congress and say, here's how we think a system would work for people to file their own taxes. And again, bringing in Senator Warren's comments in that the ability to go and see what the IRS already has. So there's a myriad of questions that come from that direction. But at the same time, Sam, you want me to give you a little bit of history, give the audience a little bit of history about what Free File is as it exists now?
Yeah, sure, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Excellent. Because I know we talked about that, but Free File's been around, and what has happened is it's basically a partnership between the IRS and some of the software companies. And there's been an income limiter, and that's been $73,000. So with the various software providers, if a taxpayer's income is under that $73,000, then they can free file through the software provider, or at least on the federal level, or the IRS provides PDF fillable forms.
Hmm.
Now, another comment from a government person, Treasury Secretary Yellen last summer, still the summer, just a couple months ago, said only 3% of people who are eligible use the free file system.
Hmm.
And it is the belief, bringing Senator Warren in and also Treasury Secretary Yellen, they believe up to 70% of taxpayers could, in fact, qualify to use a free file system. Interestingly enough, I thought before I did a little more research on this that beyond the income limitation, the $73,000, only people that had simple tax situations, what I mean simple, no businesses, no rentals or anything like that, and
Mhm.
that's not the case. It's
Hmm.
really driven by income. And so the
Hmm.
question becomes, why aren't people using it? And
Mhm.
there's a simple answer. It's the complexity of the tax law. And that's where all of you in the audience in here really provide a service to your client. So you take what would appear to be a simple situation, married couple, both working, have a couple of children. First question, how should they file?
Mhm.
I don't think the free file system is going to suggest how they file. Or if you have children that are in college, which credit should
Mhm.
you use?
Mhm.
Or some of the questions. So I believe it's probably a fear on the part of taxpayers as to the complexity of the tax laws. And I believe that study will probably, it's going to have to point that out, that the
Mhm. Mhm.
complexity of the tax law causes fear on the part of taxpayers that they can just count on a software input to make decisions for them. And I think all of us would agree as tax professionals, we know that that's where our real value comes in, is that ability to look at scenarios, look at alternatives that software, even artificial intelligence, would probably not make. And that's why I think the current system isn't more popular.
Right. And so just to, cut kind of right to the chase, the fear in the industry is that if more people can free file and file on their own, this profession could potentially be at risk. And you're saying that that is not the case at all because of these reasons. The tax code is so complex, and it's just not there, the all of the decisions and financial outcomes that that could have. Correct?
Right. I
Okay.
I kind of agree. I don't
Okay.
want to disagree, but at the same time, the the issue becomes, as artificial intelligence increases and the use of bots and algorithms and everything like that, you could have software that makes suggestions that, oh, you might want to look at doing this or you might want to
Hmm.
look at doing that. So I would strongly encourage that we as tax practitioners emphasize our ability to provide advice and not just the mechanical submission of returns. The mechanical submission of the returns is really um, what a free file system does. It really isn't there to give advice or represent a client if there's an issue with the IRS or deal with the more complex areas of taxation. So I have stressed for many, many years, long before this came out in the Inflation Reduction Act, in that if you want to be in practice for the long run, the value you demonstrate to your clients is that ability to look at the alternatives, know the law, and then when people have more complex situations, that's when they really need you. So, on the one hand, yeah, if you've got someone that has one W 2, they're single,
Hmm.
um, using a free file type system probably is more expedient. But at the same time, when it gets into the area of alternatives and point counterpoint and that advice, nothing will replace the experience of a seasoned professional.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Um, so, Tom, jumping around a little bit here, but what going back to the study that we were talking about that the IRS is doing to explore this free file system, what could be included in that? We touched on it a little bit, but what do you think that they're going to look at?
I think part of what they're going to look at is, I think there has been some, and I'm not trying to be critical of either the IRS or the software industry, but I have a feeling that if you kind of read between the lines in the funding, that perhaps the government is looking at the IRS running the program. In other words, instead of having a joint program with software providers, that in fact the IRS is the provider of the software inputs. Because I think there has been some blowback, some issues where only certain things are free in the free
Mhm.
file system, that perhaps there's a charge if you want to file a state or if you have more complex situations that, again, it isn't truly free. And again, I don't know what negotiations were done between software companies and the IRS, but I truly believe that between the lines, what Congress is trying to instruct the IRS to do is there a truly free model that is administered by the IRS for people to file and know there is no additional fees or anything like that. Again, it doesn't address the state filing.
Hmm.
We're only talking about federal, so we don't know yet um, how that could be. Now, many of you might think, I want to throw this out to you, going back to some of the old days with me. You might think, why in the world would you want to have the IRS filing your tax return? Well, I used to have a retired IRS agent that worked in my office, and when he was in the local service center, he said they would have people standing outside the door. That they actually put auditors and everything on teams to help people fill out their returns. So
Wow.
lots and lots of people have gone to the IRS in the past to receive assistance from with their filing. But I think again that the funding is looking at the IRS administering their own program for upwards of 70% of the population. But again, where does the education come? Where does the representation come? Where are
Hmm.
all the alternatives? Is that going to be in the software, or are we still going to be needed? And I think we are,
Hmm.
to provide those alternatives, the planning, and to try to maximize the benefits. Congress has given us tax benefits to minimize tax. That's not evasion. That's good planning.
Hmm. And so, Tom, jumping forward now a little bit, and we touched on this. You mentioned some things to sustain your practice and to make sure that you're in this for the long haul. But what can you tell us a little bit more about what tax pros can do? What are
Sure.
some next steps?
Yeah, very, very much so. So if you have the kind of practice that only deals with very, very simple returns, I believe your practice is threatened. I'm just going to say that the longevity of it. So again, showing the value that you provide, the fact that you look at alternatives, like I talked about. How do you file? What
Hmm.
filing status do you use? What education credits should you claim? How should you take money out of qualified plans? That's all advice. So either we have to look at the long run of expanding or selling yourself on what you do.
Hmm.
You're not just a mechanical preparer of forms. None of us are. Or you look at expanding into more complex areas such as small businesses, rental properties. Perhaps if you aren't an enrolled agent, for example, you might pursue that education so you can represent returns that you didn't prepare.
Hmm.
If you're
Hmm.
if you're an annual filing season practitioner, an AFSP, yes, you can represent the returns you prepared, but that doesn't give you the ability to help others who may go and say, "Yeah, I can do this." It's no different than doing home remodeling, right? When you do home remodeling, it may take you 10 times as long, but at some point you might say, "I give up. I need a pro."
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
could happen with people filing their own returns, and then they need you. But if you don't have that designation or you didn't prepare the return, you might be limited in the representation you can provide. So I've said for a long time that technology changes a lot of things, but advice never goes away. So
Hmm.
learning more about your business, we have all kinds of tools here at NATP for you to use to learn more about representation. If you've never done anything with, say, small businesses or rentals, we've got step by step education processes for you to learn that. If you'd want to become an enrolled agent, for example, we have enrolled agent training. So, all of those things, looking at trying to help you manage your professional development. I hope this doesn't sound like a sales pitch because it's not meant to be. Because what I'm really after here is to try to help you, our folks here in the audience, help you be around for the long haul. And like I've said, advice never goes away. So, uh, in dealing with clients for 30 plus years, the number one compliment I've always heard is that I understand things better than when I came in the door. That's why I've never been a fan of drop offs. People drop off their stuff and pick it up. You don't really have a chance to go over what happened. And normally it's only the folks who aren't happy with the outcome who want more explanation in that true drop off situation where you're totally hands off.
Hmm.
So if I can stress, communicate with your clients. Even if you have no sit down appointments, we have internet options,
Hmm.
Zoom, Teams calls, email. I've at least done that. Here's what I found out so far, and here are some of my questions. And let's talk about that. That communication is also part of that professional contact, that professional relationship that you build with your client. There's a big difference between a client and a customer. And
Mm.
in the
Hmm.
long run for your business, it's clients that will come back to see you every year.
Absolutely. No, those are great points, Tom. And like you mentioned, NHTP does have lots and lots and lots of resources for members. And we have one actually coming out that is going to be available for members summarizing the Inflation Reduction Act. So watch for that, everyone. Members watching, if you're not a member and you want to become one, natptax.com/join. We would love to obviously have you a part of our, network of tax pros. So Tom, thank you again for being here today. Really appreciate it. You just, again, have such a breadth of knowledge, and it's wonderful always to speak with you. Anything else you want to add in before we head out for the day?
It's absolutely my pleasure. And again, if I can leave you folks, I'm not trying to be critical of our business, but we need to always be aware of changes. When I got into the business in the early 1990s, I said, you know what I don't want to be? I don't want to be a buggy whip manufacturer who people used horses and buggies for thousands of years, didn't they? I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be a buggy manufacturer and it's 1900. The whole world is about to change thanks to Henry Ford and
Sure.
Daimler Benz and all those folks. You know what I'm getting at. We're
Yes.
within 20 years, a buggy whip company could have gone out of business. So again,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be in it for the long haul, be prepared to show the value you provide to your clients, learn more about your business, learn more about what clients are doing and what they're interested in, and we have to evolve, and we evolve with the times. But like I said, certain things never go out of business or go out of style. Communication, knowledge, and the ability to show our clients the value they get for using a professional rather than software. Software is a tool, and there's an old
Mm-hmm.
saying that a good carpenter never blames his hammer. So
Ah.
thanks for inviting me, Sam. It's my pleasure. I hope everybody gets through the extension season well, and we look forward to continue and help you in your journey of professional development.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Tom. Have a great day, everyone.